Welcome to Holly's Pandorium, featuring your host, psychic medium Holly Jordan.
Hey everybody, we're back. This is Holly from Holly's Pandorium. And I have today with me a special guest whose stories I have not heard at all. So we get to hear them together for the first time. So I'm super excited. I want to introduce to you Nicole. Now, help me with your last name. Can you say your last name for me?
Steegmans. You can say Steegmans. It doesn't bother me. It's Dutch.
Okay.
It's kind of like steak with a G instead of a K. Steegmans.
Oh. Okay, well, that makes it easier. That's awesome. That's awesome. So do you want to tell everybody, what is it that you do?
Absolutely. I am a Reiki master practitioner, astrologer, and tarot reader.
Nice. I actually had a recommendation for you with a lady that I know that sells crystals. So Kay actually referred me to you. So I'm excited to talk about all of your stuff. So you have a very well-rounded career you've got going there. So what did you start on the first? What was the first part of your occupation that you began working in?
Oh, definitely tarot.
Okay.
Yeah, I received my first tarot deck as a gift when I was 14. And I actually grew up in a state-subsidized apartment complex, and I just remember all of the kids coming over after school, and we'd put on Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
Oh, fun.
and I would do tarot readings for them.
Fun. So who was it that gave you your first deck?
It was actually my mom.
Really?
Surprisingly. Yeah. Which is funny. I was raised sort of like, I call it Creaster Catholic. Like we went to mass on Christmas and Easter. And she wasn't really into tarot or anything like that, but she was pretty open-minded. And so I must have asked I was getting really into Wicca around that time too.
Okay.
And she actually gifted me a Rider-Waite-Smith deck.
Fun. So what was the next part of your journey?
Astrology.
Okay.
Definitely. I've always been very drawn to astrology, and I just got really into it during the pandemic. That was one of the silver linings, as we had some time to sort of think about our interests.
Oh, yeah.
And I just took a very deep dive. My background is actually in fashion design. That's what I went to school for.
Oh, wow.
I worked in New York for a few years. I had my own clothing line in San Francisco. And, moving from San Francisco to rural Oregon, the fashion design thing didn't really translate as well out here. Then I started having babies, so I had much more limited time. And during the pandemic, I decided to become a certified personal stylist. And I was sitting at my kitchen table. I'm a little bit of a serial entrepreneur, so I had my whole setup ready to go. Like, let's start a new business.
Right.
And out of nowhere, I was like, what if I added astrology to personal styling? And I was like, that's so random. That'll never work. Like, what am I thinking? And then I happened to be doing a webinar the next day, and one of the guest speakers was an astro stylist from Geneva. And that's exactly what she did.
Wow.
And I was like, that can't possibly be a coincidence. So she was sweet enough to hop on a call with me and let me pick her brain a little bit. And so I actually did that for a couple of years. Again, being in rural Oregon, it was a little hard to figure out how to do personal styling, but the astrology just stuck. And I just took a very deep dive. And I realized that I love doing astrology readings for people.
That is kind of incredible. I mean, just to meet someone else that's doing that, that's definitely, as you would say, kismet. It's definitely meant to be. For sure.
Absolutely. I mean, to go from just having something pop in my head that seemed so random that I had literally never heard of before to meeting somebody who had a whole business around it. I definitely have gotten to a point in my life where I don't really believe in coincidences so
Right.
much anymore. It really did feel like a bit of divine intervention.
Right. So if somebody so now are you basically looking at both as kind of a combined thing, or do you do Reiki? When did Reiki come into what you're doing?
That was another just seemingly random path that I started down. I was a part of a monthly tarot circle, and one night this amazing woman, Danny Rose, walked in, and I just instantly felt like she had always been a part of the group, even though she had just moved to town.
Mhm.
And during that meeting, I even looked at her and I was like, "Oh, you've always been here. You're one of us." And it turned out that she is a Reiki master teacher and a master Reiki practitioner. And she was offering free Reiki sessions, and I had never received Reiki before. And so I went and I didn't really know what to expect. And it was it's a little hard to describe your first time receiving energy work. I wouldn't say that I had a mind-blowing experience or anything, but it affected me more deeply than I was expecting. Danny also just told me so matter of fact that I was psychic. And that was something that I'd never really said out loud
Right.
before. It's something that I still really struggle with owning and saying, even though now doing what I do, I have lots of outside validation.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff that happens that I can't explain, but I still have a hard time kind of wearing the mantle of psychic.
Right.
So I just got really interested in, everything. I don't know if you've ever met Danny. She's just an incredibly interesting kind of magnetic person. And I just wanted to spend more time with her. So she started a psychic circle once a month
Mhm.
that I started going to. And then she mentioned that she was doing Reiki attunements. And it's funny because I had like one Reiki session, didn't know anything about Reiki at all, and signed up to get my Reiki 1 attunement. And just couldn't believe the experience. Even though I'm into a lot of woo-woo stuff, I do tend to be a very skeptical person.
Right.
And I kind of went in with this attitude of like, no, this is a fun thing. I don't know what to expect. And when I received my attunement and actually felt the Reiki energy coming out of my hands, it just was this moment of like, what is happening? I can't believe this, but like I have to believe it because it's actually, I can feel it. I can feel this energy. Right. And up to that point, I would say I was more maybe claircognizant, meaning that things would just pop into my head.
Right.
As if I just knew them, but I knew it was something that I didn't have any previous knowledge of.
Right.
And so through Reiki I started having more experience of clairsentience, of feeling energy. And that was just completely new, a completely new experience for me.
I bet. So can you think back? Let's go back in time for a second. Can you think back to when you were much younger and point to any events or activities that you think may have pointed you in this direction?
Oh gosh. I was thinking about that in preparation for this interview, and I don't remember like one pivotal moment from my childhood. I did grow up in a very haunted house. I found out later. I'm the youngest of 4, so one of my older sisters, I still have reoccurring nightmares about that house. And she's like, "Well, yeah, it was super haunted." And I just remember kind of like hearing things and seeing things, but I was one of those kids that was told I just had like a very active imagination.
Right.
So I do remember just almost seeing these entities. I don't even know how to explain them. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and see things. And I'd get like a little bit scared, but not really. I'd hear people saying my name when I'd walk through the house or be in my backyard. Yeah, and then it wasn't until I was much older that I started having dreams. And for better or worse, it seems like people who have passed really like to communicate with me, especially through my dreams.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that kind of freaked me out at first. It's something that I'm sort of trying to embrace more now. And then as far as the Reiki and the energy healing, like I said, when I was around 14, I took a trip to visit my uncle in Massachusetts, and we went to the Salem Witch Museum.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, they have a part about Wicca, and I just instantly was drawn to it and just started learning everything I possibly could about Wicca. And so then I got really into spellcraft and nature magic, and just started to open up to the possibility that energy is all around us,
Right.
and is something that can be maybe manipulated or communicated with, and that you can work in tandem with.
Right. I think it was in the 70s sometime, and I need to remember this more in detail, but I think most people will connect with this. There was a couple of scientists that got together, and they were experimenting with plants, and they would take a picture of the plant, and they were recording the electrical patterns from electricity traveling in a plant. And so they would cut a leaf off, and they would take a photograph, and there was still an energy pattern that made the complete leaf, showing the existing part and what was there.
Oh, wow.
And the point of it was to just show that A, plants are living things, and B, that there's energy running through them just like there is through us. So we have electricity everywhere. We have electricity generated from our brains and our hearts, and science has proven that energy does not ever die. It does transform, but it never dies. So your mediumship experience, I think, is phenomenal, and I applaud you for trying to be more open to it. And I think that your explanation of your older sister saying, "Oh yeah, the house was haunted," and you having that remember moment of you were always told you had a big imagination, that happens to so many of us. So I believe everyone has psychic skills that they're born with, and we all have like a psychic salad. And as we go on in time, our society and our parents usually discourage us from listening to those things. You didn't see anything. You didn't hear anything. There's nothing there. It's all this, be normal. Don't talk about weird stuff. People will think you're crazy. There's all this messaging that goes on. And I don't even know that we realize we're doing it to children to discourage them, but I'm hoping that that changes with time, and that children are encouraged to talk about whatever they see, whether it's an imaginary friend or not. You never know what's communicating with you. And children are so innocent and so basic about life. Nothing is not there. Everything's there. Everything's possible. So I love that. I think that's great. And that they're using dreams to communicate with you. I have a cousin that does that. It's very common for her to hear things through dreams and know things through dreams. So connecting these, how do you work with these different modalities in your day-to-day working life? How does that come together?
Yeah, it's interesting how they've sort of intertwined and become connected. So going back to when I started my astro styling, I realized when I was looking at somebody's birth chart, when you look at a birth chart, there is an overwhelming amount of information that you can see. And I just somehow was able to parse through it and pick out things that seemed to really resonate with people, or that seemed really, accurate. And then sometimes I have ADHD, so it's not abnormal for me to kind of talk without thinking.
Yeah.
But
I
sometimes
get it.
that happens and I'm like, what am I saying? And I'll give you an example. I was doing a closet cleanse with a woman and we were doing her style consultation. And I was talking about her throat chakra. And I was like, you're a Taurus. Taurus rules the throat. But I just kept coming back to like, you need to cover up your throat. You need to protect your throat. I just kept talking about the throat chakra. And even while I'm doing it, I was like, what are you talking about? And she was like, I don't like turtlenecks. I don't want to
Right.
wear scarves. And I just wouldn't let it go. I was like, no, you've got to like wrap something around your throat. Fast forward a week later, I get a call from her. She had gone to a doctor's appointment and it turned out that she had a growth inside her throat that needed to be removed.
Right.
And I just, at the time I had no idea that's what was going on. And that's the kind of stuff that happens that I can't explain. Yeah.
I think that it's one of those things that just takes time and experience, but your guides are gonna give you information in a way that you understand.
Mm.
It'll just make sense to you. You'll know something's different. So going forward, when you get that again, there's something to pay attention to. So with Reiki, you're gonna be way more in tune to everything going on in somebody's body. So
Mhm.
when you had your first Reiki experience, how long before you started to use Reiki in your own work? Is that like a full transformation for you to do that, or how does that transfer for you?
Yeah. So it wasn't until I received my Reiki 1 attunement that I started practicing Reiki myself, mostly just because I had no understanding of what Reiki was. So Reiki is Japanese and it literally means universal life force. And so when you receive an attunement and you understand that it's something you always have access to, then it becomes really seamless integrating it into your everyday
Right.
life. And so now, when I eat a meal, I'll, send Reiki to my food. If, someone I know is struggling, I tend to like try to ask their higher self if they can receive it and send Reiki to them, knowing Reiki can't do harm ever. It's
Right.
not how it works. And with astrology, if I'm, before I work on somebody's chart, not really when I'm working with them, I'll
Right.
do some Reiki, do the Reiki symbols and just try to get that energy. Yeah, it is interesting. So before I met Danny, I would have some random things happen. For example, I had a dream, a very vivid dream about my first serious boyfriend after college. And in it, I was walking down the street and I saw him, but he didn't see me. And he looked terrible. And I was trying to get his attention and I was waving to him and he sort of looked at me and smiled. But I was like, I don't know what's going on with him. And I woke up and I was like, gosh, that was so vivid. I wonder if I should reach out to him. And then I found out the next day that he had passed away really suddenly. And yeah, so that kind of stuff wasn't really uncommon to happen, but I never really talked about it. And then I started going to Danny's psychic circle, and we were actively, trying to hone our 5 clairs,
Mhm.
and work on our psychic ability. And there was a person there who I didn't know, but we kind of connected really strongly, and I have no idea why. And whenever we would be paired up together, just stuff that I couldn't explain would happen. And so we had this one exercise we were doing where we were sitting across from each other in a meditative state, and then we were just
Mhm.
supposed to say anything that came to us. And I feel like I'm always second guessing my intuition I'm always afraid someone's going to be like, what are you talking about? And it was my turn. And I was like, oh gosh. And I was like, I'm sorry. This is so random. This doesn't make any sense. But I just kept seeing sheep and thinking about sheep.
Okay.
And then the look on their face, I was totally prepared for them to be like, what the heck are you talking about?
Right.
Like,
sure.
I mean, that I own a sheep farm, right? And I was like, I literally don't know anything about you. And they were like, yeah, it's like lambing season. So that's like on my mind is just all of these lambs is overwhelming. And I was just like, that's crazy. I thought you were going to laugh at me. So now that's happening a lot more when I do Reiki, especially because it does feel like you're establishing sort of a more direct connection with a person or even a group of people, which is really interesting. And again, I always still find myself hesitating and not really sure if I should share what I'm getting or not. The amazing and kind of unsettling thing that's begun to happen with Reiki is, I guess you would say it's an empathetic response.
Sure.
Is the clairsentience, which is something that I haven't really experienced before. And so Danny owns a shop in Astoria called Necessary Magic. And we will do something where we have a group of 4 or 5 practitioners working on one person. And I was at the crown chakra of this person who I'd never met. And I asked them, is it okay if I put my hands on you? And she said, okay. And I put my hands on her head and I just automatically felt so incredibly dizzy. Like I was going to fall over and it was so uncomfortable. Wow. And I stuck with it. And then at the end, we were all sharing and I was like, do you get dizzy? And she said the reason she came is because she's been suffering from such horrible vertigo that she can't drive anymore.
Wow.
And so she was really hoping to get some help with that. And again, I was just like, wow, I had no clue that that was something that you were actually feeling that I was picking up on. So yeah, the physical sensations can be weird. And then also almost was harder for me that I have to work with is the emotions that can come through, because that's something that is very new to me. And so kind of the opposite of what I was just describing, Danny and I did a group session for a group of women came from Portland for their friend's birthday. So it was the 2 of us doing Reiki on a group of, I think, 4 women.
Mm-hmm.
And I started out with the first woman. It was just like a very like calm, even energy. I moved to the next woman and they were probably about 1.5 feet apart. Mm-hmm. And by the time I put my hands over the second woman, I just felt this incredibly strong, deep feeling of grief and sadness. Mm-hmm. And I don't cry very often. And I was getting tears in my eyes. And I was like, what is happening? Am I crying right now? And I just couldn't shake it. This deep feeling of sadness. Like I just wanted to start sobbing.
Right.
And then I moved to the next woman and it was gone. And I was seeing like pink Hello Kitty figures with this other lady. So that can be a little hard to shake though, because it kind of sticks with you, not knowing when I put my hands in somebody's energy, sort of what I'm gonna get.
Right. Yeah, it can be very intense. And I can tell you, I've been doing this over 50 years now. And I can tell you that doing any psychic work, anything connecting with another human being, you have to protect yourself before, during, and after. 1, so you don't get overly drained. 2, that you don't wind up with any attachments. And 3, just so you can keep a clear head, because connecting with others is something we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be open and loving and caring and warm and all this cool, lovey stuff. And we're not really taught to be offensive. about other people's energies. Someone that's grieving is very heavy, extremely heavy. And it's almost impossible to get near someone that's deeply grieving and not join in that. And so your feelings are right on the nose. I mean, you're definitely getting clear messages. That's obvious. But yeah, I think that you're definitely on a good path to doing more of this work. And I think you're going to do wonderfully. You just got to protect yourself a little bit more so that you don't keep anything that's not yours, or definitely rinse yourself off really well. I usually tell people to take a salt shower or a salt bath after things like that. And you only need a teaspoon of regular table salt. It doesn't have to be special salt. And it literally neutralizes negative energy and gets it off you. It stays in your hair. It stays in your clothes. It stays on you. So, for example, if I go somewhere where there's a lot of people, something that's full, a room full of a lot of people, I always change my clothes when I get home and wash them right away and take a shower. Because that whole process, I don't want to keep anything that's not mine. And it's hard. You're just being a normal person and you're around other people. But when you're sensitive, it's easy to pick up on other things and carry them with you. So we have to be careful because it can wipe you out. So I'm very curious about your astrology work and how that works with doing things. I mean, are you doing work with people to help them with their wardrobes, or how does that work? Can you kind of explain what it is that you do? I would love to understand that better.
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody comes to me and specifically wants style astrology, I'll do that. I had a really hard time integrating the two in a way that felt like it was really resonating. I found that I honestly feel like I can be more helpful to people and be more of service just doing the astrology. And so I've been sort of experimenting and playing with it. How I met Kay was our booths were next to each other at a psychic fair, and I was doing health astrology readings.
Nice.
And so that was really interesting. The thing about astrology, like I said, is I will get somebody's birth information and then I look at their chart, and then you kind of have to pick a lane, or else when I first started, these poor people, I would give them just pages and pages and pages of information.
Right.
And I realized that's actually not helpful because it's overwhelming. It's too much. And most of the time they don't speak astrology, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And I realized what I can do to be most of service and have the most impact is to try and make it as accessible and digestible as possible so that they can understand it. I did used to get really frustrated when people would hire me and I'd try to help them and they wouldn't take my advice, which is really based in ego, but it would bother me. So I'd be like, "What are you doing? I told you what you need to do." But I realized, A, it's hard to change habits and behaviors.
Right.
And B, I wasn't making it wasn't easy enough to understand and implement. So I've even made it even more simple is I just did some astrology readings for a group of people for a birthday. And I told them I'm just going to do your big three. So in astrology, your big three are your sun, your moon, and your rising sign.
Right.
And that worked beautifully because what I realized is when I'm looking at somebody's chart, the things that jump out to me tend to be what's most pertinent to them
At the
right now
moment. Yeah.
anyway.
Right.
And that took a long time. It's something I still struggle with trusting. I used to get such horrible anxiety doing astrology readings for people because I was afraid they would be like, "What are you talking about?" Makes no sense. And I'm just blown away that people I've never met, I know nothing about, I sit down with their birth chart and I do a reading for them, and they're just like, that is so incredibly accurate. How could you possibly know that? And I can't explain it. I tell them,
Right.
I just am reading your chart like I'm reading a book, but certain things are highlighted when I'm
Right.
looking at it. And so
That's a
that's just
great
kind of what I
analogy. Good
yeah.
job.
So
That's
that's just
good.
what I kind of pick up on, and
Right.
then people know what they need. That's what I've come to realize. I'm not there to tell people what to do. I'm there to just share information that maybe they're not seeing,
Right.
and that just they probably know deep down, but it just isn't in their consciousness yet. And I'm blown away how often people who say they know nothing about astrology or nothing about anything woo woo, how intuitively they're doing exactly what they need to be doing based on what I'm reading in their chart.
Right.
And so that's always really fascinating to me.
Well, I think the reason people are drawn to any of the subject matters that have to do with the paranormal or woo-woo stuff, um, there's a hole somewhere. There's something missing in their confidence, there's something missing in their hope, there's something missing in their conscious that just says, "I need to know more. I need some affirmation. I need some confidence. I need some data. I need something to show me that I'm going in the right direction." My mom had a
Mhm.
really cool saying that she used to tell me that living your life is kind of like being on the freeway. There's always going to be road signs.
Mm.
And if you're going the right direction, you have less difficulty. If you're going the wrong way, you have a lot more difficulty.
Yeah.
And she said, you're going to have bumps. You're going to have, things that are going to detour you a little bit, but you'll know you're on the right path when things are going more smoothly. And I think that's the whole reason that these other arts and these other modalities ever really came into human life, is because we need feedback.
Mhm.
I think we need it. I think we need each other. And I think that we need someone else to pick up on, like you said, pick up on energy that we know is already there, but we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust our own intuition 90% of the time. And well, that
Mhm.
can't be. How could I do that? I don't know that. Yeah, but what if that's where I'm supposed to be? What if that's where I'm supposed to go? We have that question. And so you're answering questions that they may already know the answer to, but
Mhm.
it's the feedback part. Having somebody else to tell you, yeah, you're going to have a new career and you've been thinking about college for 2 years and not doing anything about it. And you finally feel like, oh, that's that little bit of permission that you got to give yourself to live your life. So
Mhm.
I think it's vital that people come and see people like you and people like me to just ask questions and just get some
Mhm.
answers that maybe you're afraid to ask yourself.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I think also just having somebody who is willing to listen
Mhm.
and give feedback. Unfortunately, I feel like we live in a society that doesn't offer a lot of compassion and empathy, and seems to have missed the memo that we are all connected,
Mhm.
and that when we show love and kindness to each other, not only are we actually showing love and kindness to ourselves, but overall it just makes it a better world to live in. And I think people are just really craving validation. I mean, me too, who isn't? And just that feeling of connection, and just um validation of the fact that we are spiritual beings, and I think deep down we all know that,
Yeah.
even if we're skeptics, even if we're atheists, that is a part of our humanity that you can't deny. And if you
Right.
really cut yourself off from it, you're gonna, I think, just choose more suffering than is necessary, you know?
Yeah. I think so too. I think because we have preconceived notions about what life is supposed to be consisting of?
Mm-hmm.
We decide that we're supposed to suffer a certain amount. We're supposed to work a certain way and live a certain way, sleep a certain way, eat a certain way, have certain things happen. And they say that the average person in the United States will have 68% of exactly the same things that their parents had. Well, sometimes that works good and sometimes not so much. Maybe we
Yeah.
really feel very different than our parents and want to go a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's kind of phenomenal how much we get stuck in patterns. And I don't know, I think astrology is phenomenal. It's been around forever and ever and ever. And it's been a joke in society and in the comic section of newspapers when I was growing up,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of gives you a perspective of the priority that it was given. But
Mm-hmm.
in much older days, it had a much more elevated status in society, and knowing
Mm-hmm.
astrology and astronomy were hand in hand. They were together.
Mm-hmm.
Your knowledge of the planets and their movement made you a more educated person and more knowledgeable about the people around you. So I find it
Mm-hmm.
funny that it got separated in modern culture, that we treat, astrology as a completely woo-woo subject, but astronomy is a science. Well, is it? Okay. So
I
how
agree.
come the effect on us is considered woo-woo?
Mm-hmm. And it is funny to me, people who feel comfortable even just saying to me, oh, astrology isn't real. I don't believe in it. And I'm like, that's fine. We all get to choose what we believe in, right? Reality in and of itself is an illusion for the most part.
Right.
I do love when skeptics either get gifted a reading by me or that for some reason they come of their own volition,
Mhm.
because I don't know if it's my competitive nature and my ego wanting to prove something to
Sure.
them, but those are the readings that tend to get like really spot on. And just
Yeah.
seeing their face when they're like, okay, I don't know how you knew that, but I still know that astrology is not real. But you see
Right.
that like a little crack start to form and their
Right.
minds start to open just a little bit more to the possibility that not everything is so as black and white as they might want to believe that it is.
Well, it's just the same as, I have a funny story that I've shared before. Psychics, myself and another psychic that I know have had the experience of having a ghost tell us to our face, "I don't believe in psychics." And you're listening to them. You're a medium, but it's a psychic
Mhm.
medium, and you're listening and talking to a spirit, and they're right in front of you, and they're like, "I never believed in psychics when I was alive, and I don't now either. So me talking to you and hearing you and seeing you is not real. We're right here,
Mhm.
we're conversing, but I'm not real to you." It's very funny. It
Isn't
it
it
just
amazing
cracks
that
me
you
up.
can bring that skepticism with you
Yeah.
onto the other side too?
Well, sure, but I also
Mhm.
think, I do love a good skeptic because I
Mhm.
appreciate someone that has constructive thinking, and they
Mhm.
they call it, a negative thinking or whatever, but you have to be objective. You have to be able to keep an open mind every direction. What is real? What is not real? What's tangible? What's explainable? What's not explainable? It all matters. All of it
Mhm.
matters. It's not just some of it. All of it matters. And whether it's technology that we can verify something or not, just having someone's visceral response to your comments to say, "I don't know how you knew that, but," well, there's your answer. Is it real to
Mhm.
you? Do you have an understanding of what you're hearing and seeing? Does it make sense to you? So I love that because that gives people some ground to stand on. They don't
Mhm.
have to believe that all of astrology is real and valid, but the reading you gave them was real and valid and it affected them in a positive way. So yay. That's awesome. I think that's delightful. So,
Thank you.
what are you doing these days? What are you working on, or what events are you going to? Let's hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I do astrology readings for people. I also work with Danny and Annie down at Necessary Magic quite a bit. And so coming up on May 30th, we call them our rapid energy alignments. It's essentially community Reiki. It's pay what you can, first come, first serve. And we do that every 2 months down there. And that's something that I really love. I love making Reiki as accessible as possible to
Nice.
people. I am available to do Reiki sessions for people. Something I love and that I have found so fascinating is distance Reiki.
Mhm.
And I know that's something that people might have a hard time wrapping their head around. But I actually find that when I do distance Reiki sessions for people, they're almost more powerful and more effective. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from people who I've done distance Reiki on that they can just feel a shift right away.
Yeah.
And that's great because that means that I can send Reiki to anybody anywhere.
I
And
love that. I've actually had some long distance Reiki. I took some courses, and one of the ladies in my class did long distance Reiki. She lives in Bend, and
oh,
I'm in Washington, right by
mhm.
Vancouver.
Hmm.
And she and I were talking one day on Messenger, and she said, "I feel like I need to do a session with you." And I said, "A what?" And she goes, "A Reiki session." I went, "Oh, okay." And so we set up a time, and we did a video chat, and she goes, "I have to lay down to do this." And I said, "Okay." So within minutes, she started saying some things to me, and she goes, "Just give me a minute." And I could feel my lower back start to warm up
Mhm.
physically. I felt it. I was, a couple 100 miles away from her, and I could feel it as if she put a heating pad on my back. And
Mhm.
it ended up, she diagnosed and told me a bunch of stuff that I ended up finding out from my doctor later were right on the nose. She had it
Mhm.
right on the nose. And it's funny because she doesn't do it for a living because she's
Mhm.
afraid she won't know enough, which
Mm.
kills
Yeah.
me because she's very talented. But
Mm.
when you said something about not, second guessing yourself, we all do that. We
Mhm.
all do that. I'm so glad you do long distance Reiki because I may have to call you one of these days because there's sometimes that I just know Western medicine is inadequate. And I think everyone has that opinion to a degree. We
Yeah.
believe our doctors only so much because sometimes what they do works and sometimes it doesn't.
Mhm.
Or it's just not accessible on the level that we need it to be for the care
Mhm.
that we actually require. And I think sometimes energy healing is the source of the problem. If our energy is wackadoo, it affects everything. It's like a ripple in a pool of water. If one
Mhm.
thing is out of balance, if one thing is too tight or too drained or has too much negative energy in it, if we don't siphon it and filter it and shift it, we don't get things rolling like they need to be. You know, we're so stressed out in our
Absolutely.
culture. And I think that anything we can do to heal ourselves and to feel better, we should try. We should at least try. And to me, Reiki is no harm. There's no there's no pills, there's no pins,
Mhm.
there's nothing. It's just a simple version of dealing with energy in the body, which really isn't simple, but it has wonderful effects. So I would highly recommend it to anyone. If
Mhm.
I'll just say this to our listening and viewing audience, if you have health issues that nobody seems to solve, or if you have health issues that you just don't think anyone can help you with, try it. You have nothing to
Mhm.
lose. You have nothing to
Nothing
lose.
to lose. And I
Right.
mean, how many of us have had that experience going to the doctor, trying to put into words what's going on, and the doctor just being like, "Well, I don't know. Let's do a bunch of tests. Let's try to figure it out," and just feeling frustrated.
Right.
And I think allopathic medicine has its place, definitely, but the whole point of holistic medicine is you're treating the whole being and the whole person. And whether you're a spiritual person or not, like you said, it's physics 101, energy can neither be created nor destroyed, and we
Right.
are energetic beings.
Right.
That's a scientific fact.
Right.
So it would make sense that if your energy is off, if there's a blockage, that would have, like you said, a ripple effect
Right.
and could impact your health. Absolutely.
Well, and I think one of the coolest things that I learned, and maybe you can help expand on this a little bit, but this friend of mine explained to me that our liver physically, we know is a filter in the body like the kidneys are, but it is spiritually also. And so she
Mhm.
explained to me that our liver, when we go through trauma, our poor liver is this amazing, miraculous organ in our body that really takes the brunt of a lot of our suffering, which
Mhm.
you think, okay, when people are stressed out, they have heart issues or they have breathing issues or they have body pains, but our liver is doing all this filtering work and all this heavy lifting that we don't realize. And that's exactly part of what I had to have done because my liver
Mm.
was full of grief. I had lost 5 members
Mhm.
of my family in a 2-year
Mm.
period,
I'm
and it
sorry to hear
just
that.
really wiped me out. And as much as time had gone by and healing from grief and dealing with grief, and it's like grief never goes away. You just learn to deal
Mhm.
with it. But she helped to lighten the burden and I felt better. I was sleeping better. I had less back pain and I still feel that way. So what she did was long lasting. It
Mhm.
wasn't just one and done. It took a couple of sessions, but genuinely, I would do it again in a minute because she found things that I wasn't even aware of. I
Mhm.
didn't even realize. And I have medical science tests that show that, yeah, I had problems in those areas. And afterwards, with what she did, I felt so much better.
Mhm.
But it made more sense that it wasn't just, well, I wasn't eating improperly. My body was just suffering. My body mentally was in pain and it was coming out in my liver,
Mhm.
which was
Yeah,
incredible.
and I don't know at what point we decided to tell people that these parts of our beings are separate. Our emotional being, our energetic being, and our physical being are all connected. And why wouldn't they be?
Right,
And I feel like, luckily, thanks to books like The Body Keeps the Score, medical science is getting more on board with the fact that, if something's affecting us psychologically, emotionally, of course it's affecting us physically
right,
as well. You can't tease the two apart.
right. Well,
Mhm.
because I think society wise, if you fall down and skin your knee, well, you get a band aid. And immediately
Mhm.
everybody knows you get an ice pack and rest is essential. What nobody talks about is, are you afraid to walk that place again? Are you afraid you're going to fall again? What else happened to
Mhm.
you? And so I'm using a very small example to exaggerate a big problem. When
Yeah.
people go through an emotional bruise or an emotional fall down, how do we heal from that? Well, we tell everybody it takes time and, pray
Mhm.
through it or meditate through it or get some extra rest or, maybe talk to a therapist a little bit or do something to help emotionally to heal. But there's some bruises so big, there isn't an ice pack big enough to make the swelling go down. We need some
Mhm.
extra help. And I think the energy shifting just makes sense to me. And
Mhm.
it's not for everybody, I'm sure, but why not? You know,
Why
the energy's
not?
not going to go
Yeah.
away. It's going to stay there, but do something with it. Shift
Mhm.
it, mold it. I think we don't think it's possible. We don't realize what's possible because we don't ask.
Yeah.
So, what would you tell somebody in this situation that's says they just don't feel good? They're tired all the time or they're
Mhm.
frustrated with the news on the TV and how would you go about approaching that? What are some things you would tell someone to help them feel better?
Oh, I feel like I would probably need some more information. Like you're saying, they probably know on a deeper level. That's the thing. is we know what we need. And so when you're doing Reiki for somebody, it's not that I'm healing them, it's that I'm creating a safe space for them to trust and heal themselves, for
Very good.
them
Yes.
to tap in and listen to their intuition. And it might seem like it's something I'm doing, but honestly, I'm just a channel of the energy that's kind of getting things going. They know what they need, you
Right.
know. So in that instance, I'd be happy to do a Reiki session, an astrology reading, a tarot reading, because every time those three modalities work so well together, because they start to peel away the layers of doubt, and they start to open up little windows and little glimpses of, oh, I didn't think about it that way before. And then it kind of has a domino effect until you start to unravel it and start to get to the core of what you're not getting. Essentially, that's what it is there is something that you're not getting enough of. And,
Right.
in our society, probably sleep, probably
Right.
empathy and
Right.
compassion,
Right.
probably true rest where your attention isn't getting scattered in a
Right.
million places. And, probably self-love. We have like a real deficit of self-love, really thinking about, what do I need to be eating? What do I need to
Right.
be consuming? Do I need to be looking at social media? Or should I be going for a walk outside and seeing how many spring flowers I can notice
Right.
today?
Right.
And the answer is going to be different for everybody, but I think that intuitively, sometimes we just need that little jump start, that little bit of information so that we can trust ourselves
Right.
and give ourselves what we need.
Right. So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, Nicole, and set up any one of these type of things with you, how would they go about doing that?
The best way to reach me right now is actually on my Instagram. So it's just my name, Nicole.Steegmans. You can also find me on Facebook, and it's just Nicole Steegmans. I'll pop up. It's Nicole Coccinelle Steegmans is the full name on there. And that's the best way to get a hold of me right now. Also, definitely follow Necessary Magic in Astoria. 95% of the events and in-person things that I do are through them. And they just
Gotcha.
have amazing classes and events happening all the time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So if someone just wanted to email you or something, can they do that? Is there an email that you have that someone could reach you at?
Absolutely. So info@nsteegmans.com.
Can you spell that out so that someone that's just listening to this information can find you?
Absolutely. So info, INFO @NSteegmans.com.
Perfect. That's awesome. So thank you so much for coming on today and doing this with me. This was delightful. I love
Thank you
that.
so much. I'm
Yeah.
so happy and grateful to be here. My kids were very impressed that I was being interviewed for a podcast.
Well, tell them that's awesome because my grandkids think it's very cool. They love it. Yes, I'm definitely the cool Nana that does the podcast stuff. Well, I want our kids to grow up in a place that the world is more friendly about the paranormal, and it's getting better, so much better. But I want it to get even more common so that it's not treated as such an odd thing to talk about in public, that people aren't so afraid of what they don't understand. There was a time when our culture was far more far more open to things that were unusual, and people that were gifted like you that have an ability to connect and have that extra insight that other people need were revered and admired,
Mhm.
not looked at as odd, but
Mhm.
looked at as you're a tool. You're a public tool that's able to help other people. And that's honestly, that's my focus. When I do a reading for someone psychically, that's what I literally say. Let me be a good tool in the toolbox of life. Let me
Mhm.
help this person with whatever it is that they need. And that's all we're doing. We're not doing it to be celebrities. It's not about that. It's about just helping one person at a time. I'm
Yeah.
very interested though too about your group activities. So
Mhm.
how big of a group have you guys done when you do like a Reiki healing thing? What's the most number of people you've had in a group?
In person,
Mhm.
4. We'll send distance healing, to whole countries sometimes.
That's cool.
What else can you do when you feel helpless? But in person, I would say 2, 3 practitioners could easily accommodate a fairly large group. And I will say that birthday party, the 4 women that came in from Portland, it was just such a magical experience. You could tell none of them had any experience with Reiki or astrology or tarot, and they just not only did they have a good time, but it felt like they just got something really significant and powerful out of the whole experience.
I think that's a great idea for a birthday. I think that
Mhm.
sounds like a lot of fun. So did you do a horoscope reading on everybody in the group?
We had limited time, so half of the group did a tarot reading with Danny, and half of the group did an astrology reading with me.
Fun.
Mhm.
That's very cool. But that
It
to
was
me,
very
that's a
cool.
nice way to spend a birthday. I think that that's a
Mhm.
fun way to spend a birthday. That to me is on the same level as going and getting manis and petties because you're kind of
And
pampering yourself.
absolutely, and Danny has created such a beautiful space. We did the group Reiki in her, ritual room, which is basically a red velvet tent with cushions and candles, and then at the end of your session and your readings, you're in a shop where you can get crystals and incense and whatever you need to help
Fun.
support you. So it was just, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That sounds wonderful. How fun.
Mhm.
Well, thank you again, Nicole, for coming on today. And for everyone listening and watching, as my dear friend Jay likes to remind me, please be sure to hit like and subscribe. It only takes a minute. And it's wonderful to be able to share the podcast with other people that are like-minded. You never know who might need to see this. So please
Mhm.
share it. You never know who you might be helping us to reach. We want to spread the word and let this information go out more to more people that are curious and want to know, that have questions and maybe were afraid to ask and didn't know who to ask. So here we are.
Mhm.
This is
Spread
Holly
the
from
word.
Holly's Pandorium saying thank you all for coming today and thanks for sitting with us and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.